All right, so check this out, man. Football has these moments where everything just flips on its head. Like you wake up one morning, check the headlines, and boom, something happened that nobody saw coming. And that's when the sport gets really fun because it's not just about goals or points, it's about chaos, drama, human stories colliding in real time. And that's exactly what's going on here. You've got a manager out the door, another one walking in with this wild, fearless energy, and suddenly an entire club's future looks like it's hanging on this insane gamble. And that's why I love it, because you can feel that tension in the air, the uncertainty, the risk, the possibility that this could either blow up spectacularly or turn into one of the craziest success stories we've seen in years. And the only way to really get it is to sit back, dig in, ride this wave all the way through. Because trust me, once you understand what's happening here, you're not going to want to look away. All right, so here's the thing, man. Nuno Espírito Santo's exit from Nottingham Forest isn't just some little managerial switch. It's one of those moves that tells you a lot about how modern football works, and it's kind of crazy when you really break it down, because this guy comes in with a reputation, right, steady hand, respectable resume, Premier League experience, Wolves, Spurs. He's not some random dude off the street. But the whole vibe with him at Forest never really clicked. It always felt like oil and water. Like you're watching the team and you're thinking, okay, what's the plan here? And the answer was usually not monk, because it was just sit deep, absorb pressure, try to nick something on the counter. And yeah, sometimes that works. But in the Premier League, when every game is a dogfight, you can't just keep playing not to lose. Eventually, the cracks start showing, fans get restless, players start doubted, the board gets itchy fingers, and suddenly it's like, well, maybe this wasn't the guy after all. And that's what happened here, man. It wasn't even a dramatic collapse. It was more of this slow suffocation where you realize the club isn't moving forward. It's just standing still while everyone else around you is sprinting. And the crazy part is, Nuno's whole demeanor almost made it worse, because he's calm, stoic, doesn't say a lot, which can be great when you're winning. But when you're losing, that same energy looks like you're just checked out, like you don't have a spark. And Forest needed a spark badly, because their whole identity was becoming the team that survives. Barely. And in the Premier League, man, you don't want to live in that zone for too long, because eventually it catches up to you. So his exit wasn't shocking in the sense of headlines, but it is wild when you think about how quickly football just chews people up. One day you're the savior, the guy who was supposed to stabilize things. The next day you're the problem, and boom, door hits you on the way out, and the machine just keeps rolling. Like, this dude gave his shot. Maybe he didn't have the tools. Maybe the squad didn't buy in. Maybe the board was impatient. But whatever it was, the whole experiment burned out fast. And in football, man, when you burn out, there's no easing into it. It's just gone. So here's the wild part, man. Ange Postecoglou rolling into Nottingham Forest is like flipping the script completely, because this dude is not your typical cautious, calculated, grind out results kind of manager. No, he's the opposite. He's this full throttle, attack minded, all guns blazing type of guy who shows up and says, we're not here to survive, we're here to play. And that's a whole different energy for a club that's been hanging around in survival mode. And the thing about Ange is, he doesn't just coach football, he installs a culture. Like, he walks in the room and the first thing he's pushing is belief, identity, bravery on the ball. And he doesn't care if you're going up against Manchester City or some bottom of the table side. The instructions are the same. Play your football. Don't back down, don't shrink. And that's nuts, because Forest haven't had that kind of ambition in years. They've been this defensive, reactive team, living off scraps. And suddenly you're talking about a guy who wants to flood the midfield, push fullbacks high, overload the attack, keep the ball moving at warp speed. And it's going to shock people, man, because fans are not used to seeing Forest play with that kind of swagger. And at the same time, it's risky as hell. Like, you're talking about a squad that wasn't built for this kind of system. So there's going to be moments where it looks like chaos, defenders caught out, spaces wide open, mistakes getting punished. But that's the thing about Ange. He thrives in that chaos. He believes that the reward is worth the risk. And when it works, it's electric. Like one of those moments where you can't take your eyes off the game because it feels alive. And the crazy part is, this guy has done it everywhere he's been. Australia, Japan, Celtic, then Spurs. Every time people doubted him, he walked in and changed the whole narrative. So if he can bring even half of that magic to Forest, man, you're talking about transforming them from relegation scrappers into a team that could actually punch people in the mouth, take points off the big dogs, maybe even start building something long term. And that's why his arrival feels so massive. because it's not just a managerial appointment, it's a mindset shift. It's the club saying, we're done being scared, we're done being small. And it's Ange saying, all right, let's go to war my way. And that kind of boldness, that's what makes football worth watching. What's really crazy about this whole situation, man, is the culture shift that's about to go down at Nottingham Forest, because you've got to understand when Nuno was there, the whole vibe was cautious, pragmatic, almost survivalist. Like the mentality in the locker room felt like, all right, boys, let's just get through 90 minutes without getting slaughtered. And that kind of mindset seeps into everything. The way players approach training, the way fans expect matches to unfold, it becomes this low energy damage limitation kind of culture. But when you drop someone like Ange into that environment, you're basically throwing a hand grenade into the room, because this guy doesn't just coach tactics, he rewires the way people think about football. He walks into a club and tells the player, we're not here to just exist, we're here to express ourselves, to take risks, to dominate. And that's such a massive psychological jump for a team that's been told for months to keep it tight, stay compact, play safe. So now you've got defenders being asked to push higher, midfielders being told to look forward instead of sideways, attackers being encouraged to go for it instead of waiting for the one lucky counterattack. And that shift is more than just X's and O's on a whiteboard. It's a belief system, it's energy, and it's contagious, man. Like once guys buy into it, suddenly you've got this swagger on the pitch. Fans start to feel it in the stands. The whole club starts buzzing with the idea that they're not just another relegation candidate, they're a team with ambition. And the thing about culture shifts is they're messy at first. You're going to see mistakes. You're going to see players who look uncomfortable because they're not used to being brave on the ball. You'll see some wild games where it looks like absolute chaos, but in that chaos, something new is being built. And that's what makes it exciting, because it's not just about wins or losses in the short term. It's about transforming the DNA of the club, like making it so that when people talk about Nottingham Forest, they don't just say, oh, that scrappy team that defends for their lives. They start, that's the team that plays fearless football. That's the team that will come at you no matter who you are. And that's a radical shift, man, because culture is everything in sports. It dictates how players train, how they think, how they handle setbacks. When you bring in a guy whose whole identity is built on courage and expression, you're basically telling everyone, the old Forest is dead, welcome to something brand new. And that's not just tactical, that's spiritual, man. The whole thing with fan expectations here is why, because you've got to think about what Nottingham Forest supporters have been living through. It's been this constant roller coaster of, are we going down or are we barely hanging on? And that creates this weird emotional fatigue. Like every game you're sitting there with your heart in your throat, hoping for a scrappy point, praying for some kind of miracle goal. And when you live like that season after season, you start lowering your standards, you stop dreaming big, you just want to survive. So when Nuno was around, it was almost like fans accepted boredom as long as it meant safety. But the problem with that is football isn't supposed to be just survival, man. It's supposed to be entertainment, passion, energy, something that makes you feel alive on a Saturday. And that's why Ange rolling in has lit this fire, because now fans are torn between two extremes. On one side, you've got excitement, this raw anticipation that they might finally see their club play with courage, front foot football, goals, drama, like actual entertainment instead of sitting through 90 minutes of defensive misery. But on the other side, you've got fear, because they know his style isn't about grinding out boring 1-0 wins. It's about taking risks, which means some games are going to be car crash. Some nights they're going to lose 4-0 because the press got torn apart, and fans who've been scarred by relegation battles don't forget that stuff easily. So their expectations become this crazy cocktail of hope and dread. Like they want to believe Forest can become a team that punches above its weight, but they're also bracing themselves for the possibility that it blows up in their faces. And that's what makes the atmosphere so charged, because now every match day is more than just points on the board. It's a referendum on belief. It's the fans testing whether this new identity is worth the ride. And honestly, that kind of expectation is heavier than people realize, because the players feel it, the manager feels it, and the board definitely feels. So what you've got is a fan base that's desperate for change, desperate for excitement, but also scared of going back to the nightmare of the championship. And that tension is going to define how this whole experiment plays out. Because if Ange can deliver even glimpses of hope early on, the fans will buy in and ride with him through the rough patches. But if it goes bad fast, man, those same fans will turn, because hope is fragile when you've been burned before. And right now, Forest supporters are standing on that edge, staring at the possibility of something incredible, but also the fear of more heartbreak. What's nuts about this whole thing, man, is the Premier League impact, because you're not just talking about a managerial change at some mid-table or relegation-threatened side. You're talking about a stylistic disruption being dropped right into the chaos of the most competitive league in the world, and that shakes things up way beyond Nottingham Forest. Because think about it, teams have been preparing for Nuno's Forest, like, okay, they're going to sit deep, they're going to absorb, they're going to try to nick one. So the big clubs, the mid-table clubs, they all know what to expect, and then suddenly here comes Ange Postecoglou with this kamikaze, fearless, attacking football, and that flips the script. And now, those same teams that thought they were in for a sloggy 90 minutes are suddenly being pressed high, being forced into these wild end-to-end games, and that unpredictability changes the dynamics of the league. Because Forest might not win every match, but they're going to bloody some nose, man. They're going to take points off teams that weren't ready for that kind of intensity, and that ripple effect matters. In the Premier League, where one or two unexpected results can completely screw up title races or relegation battles, and beyond the results, it's the narrative shift. Because if Ange actually makes Forest entertaining and competitive, it starts challenging this unwritten rule that smaller clubs should just survive quietly. It shows that even with limited resources, you can go toe-to-toe with giants if you have the right belief system. That's dangerous for the old guard, man, because it forces other clubs to ask themselves if they're being too safe, if they're holding back out of fear. Plus, it adds this injection of chaos to a league that already thrives on storylines. Like, imagine Arsenal, Liverpool, City, Chelsea, all dealing with this Forest side that doesn't play scared. That's a headache for everyone. And then fans across the league start paying attention too, because suddenly neutral viewers are like, oh, Forest are on, that'll be fun. That boosts the profile of the club and the competition itself. So the impact is layered. It's tactical, psychological, cultural, and even commercial, because the Premier League feeds on drama, and Postecoglou's football is pure drama. So whether it succeeds or fails, it still shifts the conversation. It still puts pressure on teams that thought they could cruise against Forest. And it still reinforces why the Premier League is the craziest show on earth, because where else do you see a relegation-threatened side bring in a manager with this much audacity, and suddenly everyone in the league has to adjust? So here's where it all lands, man. The whole thing with Nuno leaving and Ange stepping in isn't just some regular managerial shuffle. It's a total vibe shift. It's one of those moments where you feel the ground under a club starting to move. Because this isn't about replacing one guy with another. This is about ripping up the old playbook and saying, screw it, let's do something bold. And that's why it's so fascinating, because yeah, it could go sideways, it could crash and burn, but it could also spark something we haven't seen at Forest in decades. That energy, that swagger, that fearless mentality where you're not just hoping to survive, you're daring to command. The Premier League feeds on that kind of chaos, man. It's what makes this league so addictive. Because no matter how big or small the club is, one crazy decision can flip the narrative and keep everyone watching. And honestly, whether you're a Forest fan or just a football fan in general, you gotta respect the guts it takes to make this call, because safe is boring, and this is the opposite of safe. This is throwing yourself into the fire just to see if you can come out stronger. So good luck to Forest. Good luck to Ange. I hope it works. I hope it gives the fans something wild to believe in again. And to everybody riding this wave, thanks for sticking around. Thanks for caring, thanks for being part of the ride, because that's what makes the whole thing worth it, the fact that we all get to watch it unfold together.